Hi, my name is Brian Darcy James, and this is my life in the theater. I feel like it has to start with some product placement, because if it's not apparent. Blood Brothers was my first Broadway show. I did it at the Music Box Theater, which is an extraordinary jewel of a theater, no pun intended. There's so many memories that come forward here. Mostly the people, probably throughout this, I'm gonna be talking about the people that made the experience. But the first thing that comes to my mind is my dear friend Sam Samuelson, who alerted me to the fact that there was an opening in the show when they were in Toronto. Now, this is a show I knew because of my sister, Anne. Anne had spent some time in London, and she saw this show in the 80s, and she said, Brian, you gotta see this show. It's a great show, you could do it. I was a lot younger then. So it made sense. So I knew the score because I had the score on a cassette tape that I played in my Honda Civic. And so when my buddy Sam got cast in this show, I was so excited because I knew somebody in it. An actor named Philip Lale was in the original production, and he was leaving to go do the Kentucky cycle, which was going to be on Broadway. So they knew they had to fill that slot coming to Broadway. Sometime in the middle of the run, I think, if memory serves. Anyway, so Sam tipped me off to this. Sam is now a big wig agent in Chicago, so he's no longer acting. He's representing people like myself. But he let me know that this was happening, so I was able to do what you have to do. Like, I sent my resume and all that stuff to Pat McCorkle, who was the casting director who gave me my first Broadway show. So yeah, that's what strikes me is that the precursor of that is my way into it was through Sam and through my sister. But what was really interesting is that I was an understudy in that show, and I was there with the original British cast, Con O'Neill and Mark Michael Hutchinson, who played the brothers, and I was the understudy for Mickey, which is the role that Con played. To this day, one of the nicest things I've ever received in the theater was when Con left the show. He gave me and he'd been with it for a long time. I think he'd done it on the West End before it came here. But he gave me his original script with all the notes that he had in it, which I thought was an extraordinary gesture, because that is I don't know, I just always was so touched by that. So thanks, Con. I cherish that. I still have that. It's a really amazing thing that you did. What made this unforgettable experience, this show, an unforgettable experience for me, was that I was the Mickey understudy, and when Con and Mark left, David Cassidy and Sean Cassidy came into the show to play the two leads. Sean was there to begin that changeover time, but David was delayed for some reason. He was probably otherwise engaged. So there was a week or two where I was actually playing the part of Mickey with Sean Cassidy, much to the delight of myself and family and friends, much to the chagrin of a lot of people who wanted to see David Cassidy. But Sean Cassidy remains a friend and a great supporter, and it was really, really great to kind of have that chance to take on a leading role, and have more than one. Usually understudies have like a one-stop shop, and they get to either fail or succeed, in that little moment. But I had a good couple of weeks where I got to do that, so that was an extraordinary experience. Yeah, I love that. I love that show so much. Tell me it's not true. I've got a choice here: Carousel and Floyd Collins. I'm going to go with Carousel because that's where I met my wife, Jennifer Prescott. So that, end of story. That's all I should say about that, because that's really all that matters. But the truth is that was a seminal experience as well, because there's so many friends. That was a great ensemble of people: Taye Diggs, Michael O'Donnell, Audra McDonald, Fisher Stevens, Shirley Verrett, the great late Shirley Verrett, Eddie Corbett, Lavette George, my dear friend Lavette. That was a great show. Nick Heitner directed it. Bob Crowley designed it. And the whole thing was impeccable. Michael Hayden had done it in London. He came over and performed it beautifully on Broadway. It's interesting, I'm looking at this. I have this actual Kenneth Macmillan poster in our house because that's Michael's face on the playbill, but the model was my buddy Michael O'Donnell, who was also in the show. So it's actually his poster. He lives in London now. We're just kind of housing it for him, but I might have to steal it from him. That's some little inside scoop on the actual playbill artwork. But really, at the end of the day, it was where I met my wife, and my wife was forced to dance with me, and June is busting out all over, which was a problem because she was a dancer and I am not a dancer. But it all worked out. Floyd Collins. Floyd Collins, Adam Gettle, the genius that he is, and Tina Landau. Boy, this was a remarkable experience because it was a small show and it was a tight-knit group, and it was the music, his music in general is like nothing I've ever come across in the canon of the Broadway world. So I did a workshop of this. When I was doing Blood Brothers, I got a cassette tape of 3 songs by Adam Gettle for this show called Floyd Collins, and they needed people to audition for these roles. And I actually played Homer who is the brother to Floyd, played ultimately by Jason Danieley, perfectly. Is that a word? What happened to my emphases? I did a workshop of this in Adam's loft, but what I remember was listening, again, the cassette tape of the Ballad of Floyd Collins and just thinking, oh my God, this is music that I absolutely love. And it just sounded so unto itself. It had a pop kind of sensibility. It had the kind of Appalachian feel to it, but it was just so beautiful. And then, of course, it was followed by As We Enter In, the Lights of the Sky Die Down. And that kind of just took me to a whole nother level. It was just unbelievable. I was listening to these things and having a chance to audition for it. So, but then again, I mean, you've got such an extraordinary cast. Chris Invar played Floyd. Terry McCarthy played Nellie. Unbelievable. Nat Bennett, James Bohannon, and I were the reporters. Last thing I'll say about this is that the reporter song was, I believe, one of the last things written for the show in this iteration. Matt Bennett and James Bohannon and myself were using a lot of viewpoints, which is what Tina uses to kind of create her beautiful masterpieces. So we were establishing a lot of language, physical language, without any song present. So we had all this physical vocabulary that we were able to devise, waiting for the song, and so we kind of plugged that into the song after we had this physical language. But what was really interesting is I'll never forget Adam Gettle coming in with his guitar, playing, oh, here's the song, junk, 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 the kind of Django Reinhardt feel, and in one of the newspapers that he references in the lyrics was the Saginaw Globe. Saginaw is my hometown in Michigan, and I was flummoxed because I couldn't believe that that word had ended up in this lyric. And I said, did you know that I was from Saginaw? He said, absolutely no idea. It just sounded like a funny name. I was looking in an almanac. It sounded funny, and it sounded perfect. And I always thought that was wild, that should end up maybe Kismet. Adam Gettle, genius. Titanic, oh my God, Titanic. So many things. The Company, I mean, what an extraordinary, like, murderer's row of a company. And not just a few, a lot of people made that company kind of just shine. I'm sure this has been said many times, but it's inevitable that you feel a sense of family when you do shows. Sometimes you have a strong sense of it, sometimes it's not so strong. This was an extraordinarily strong sense of family. Richard Jones directed this so beautifully and surprisingly, and there were so many things that come to mind. I mean, I guess what's coming to mind mostly is the preview process, where, major chunks were being, taken away, and major chunks were being added, and the storytelling was shifting and changing so much to get that final equation correct. And it was arduous. It was really arduous. It didn't help that people were kind of laughing in the press that this was even happening in the first place, which I always kind of love. I love that feeling of wanting to prove someone wrong, because anything on stage can be successful. It just takes imagination and execution. And I noticed you have the original Titanic Playbill. That's, I don't know how many people have that. Big song for me was Barrett's song. And this was really the first time I had a role on Broadway where I had a big responsibility that I was originating. And Maury Eston's score and Peter Stone's book just served everyone so beautifully. But that song in particular was such a, it fit like a glove for me. I loved singing it. I loved where it sat in my voice. And then to be able to have something in the score that was so muscular and kind of sinewy in the music, to have the chance to come back a little bit later and sing the duet with Martin Moran, which, again, those are indelible moments of feeling like this is extraordinary material. This is an extraordinary person I'm doing with. Marty is a dear, dear friend who I love dearly. And being able to kind of sculpt and create this thing that was going to be ours, but also we had this sense that it was just so beautiful, and it really resonated in the show, I believe. A guy who wants to propose to his girlfriend back home, and a guy who's in love with technology, and them kind of these two worlds colliding and finding kinship there. But I'll end this by saying it was the family of actors that make that experience so unforgettable. So thanks to them. Thanks to them all. It was a really great experience. The Wild Party. Oh boy, another, I mean, talk about a score. That's what I think of the first thing when I see this. I think of Andrew Lippa's score, and just how it's just a gut punch. It's just a slap in the face of amazing music, representing this kind of debauched, out of control evening in Queenie's house. Julia Murney, just perfect in this part, just perfect. Taye Diggs and Idina Menzel and I were kind of finished out this quartet of roles, and I love this part so much because it was a bit of a departure for me. It was kind of an id part, just kind of Burrs is just kind of a raging id, and an alcoholic clown. How many times do you get to do that? But that experience was a lot because it was a very physical show for me. I just remember the feeling of it starting and then just you having to be ready for this thing to kind of just move and not stop, which I think was the power of it. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about, I think it's Poor Child, the quartet, it's called Poor Child. And there was a moment in the show where I would always crack, and Julia Murney would hand me, before the show, she'd slip me a little Tic Tac that she would claim had magical powers to help me get over that crack. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it was her little thing of saying, I hear what's going on, don't worry about it, here's your little pill. And I'd pop it in and I'd be like, no! Didn't work, Julia. Do people feel like they've died? And they're looking at it like, ah, yes, here's your life in theater. That is the name of this program, isn't it? Sweet Smell of Success. This, in my mind, is just a landmark, because if Titanic was an opportunity for me to do something in an amazing ensemble of actors, this was the first time I actually kind of wear the costume of a leading role. And to do it in tandem with, can you see it? Can you see the man? John Lithgow and Kelly O'Hara. First time I worked with Kelly. I felt a great deal of responsibility getting it right because of the nature of the role, but also because the music was written by Marvin Hamlish. The great, beautiful, concise, and revealing lyrics of Craig Carnelia. John Guare writing the book. Christopher Wheeldon with the choreography. I mean, this, if you had a pedigree of people that were going to create something, you'd want always to start there with those people, and you just think, just why not? Just call it a day, have them do everything. The other thing that I think about is that my daughter was born in this show. She was born right before we went to Chicago for the out-of-town tryout. So my wife and I, Jennifer and I, got into, a car and drove with Grace, who was, this big, in the back of the car. Jen was in the back seat. We didn't just throw her in the back. But that was such an adventure, because here I was climbing this mountain of the show, which was such a great part and such a great experience. And I was having this other experience of a lifetime, learning what it was to be a father and to have a family and to be really nervous about all of it. So Chicago sticks out in my mind, maybe because that run lasted longer than the one on Broadway. I don't know. I'd have to check the math. But I say that jokingly. I mean, it is a heartbreaker that this show didn't last longer than it did. That show will have its moment, I think, for sure. I mean, the score is just so incredible, and what he's doing with the idiom of jazz, and, American jazz music. Hamlish himself is kind of an idiom unto itself, and of course the musical theater, kind of vibe of it all. It makes for an incredible. I encourage everyone to listen to that album. It's a great album and a great show. John Lithgow, I'm not trying to gloss over Kelly, because I'm hoping that she comes up somewhere in these pages ahead. I'll just speak about John because he became a really important figure to me, because he made that experience seem possible, and he made it feel like I deserved to be there. And never once did I feel like I was trying to the door was always open, and it always felt like a partnership in terms of what I was capable of bringing, which was miles behind him in terms of his experience. But never once did I feel that we weren't doing this together, which gave me such confidence, and it was such a gift. He remains a dear friend. I just saw him in London about 5 days ago. The guy is a class act. This is moving ahead, we were in LA long after the show. We went to LA with Grace, and we're trying to figure out if we're gonna live there. And Jen was working, she needed a car, and John's like, "Take my Ford Explorer, take it, you can have it." I mean, anyway, this is an ad for Ford Explorer. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is so important to me because, well, first of all, it should be noted that no one could touch Norbert Leo Butz, what he did with that role. I mean, no one could touch it. I didn't even try to imagine that I could. But being in a show where I got to do comedy was something that meant a great deal to me, because comedy is something that I love. I love it. And I've had some opportunities, but not like that. That show by David Yazbek and directed by Jack O'Brien, who, Saginaw, you're gonna hear that word a lot in this session we're having here. But Jack O'Brien's from Saginaw, Michigan. He directed this production, and I came into it after Norbert left and John Lithgow left. Keith Carradine and I did it together. We had the partnership of creating these parts in a. It's always a unique situation when you're coming into a show, because you have to honor what's there and keep that afloat, but also try to find things that are naturally yours. If you have a good director, if you have a good stage manager, they're usually the ones in charge of kind of making all that happen, and the director will come in and kind of put the finishing touches on it. But if you're allowed to have some autonomy there and stay within the lines, but kind of create a new life, that is the best scenario. And I imagine it happens, and I imagine it doesn't happen too, in terms of like what you're allowed to do. I was lucky in that I was given kind of some wide range to kind of figure out that role. But just the unadulterated fun that this show was, oh my God. I would love to do something like that again. I mean, it was just so much fun. Lieutenant of Inishmore, Martin McDonough. These two things were kind of dovetailed in my life. And I was scheduled to do the production of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels when Lieutenant of Inishmore moved from the Atlantic Theater to Broadway. So I left I did it on Broadway as well as the Atlantic, but I left it to go to do the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels contract. So that's just bubbles up, boring boring business information for you. It was my first time working with the genius that is Martin McDonagh, and the craftsmanship of his writing and the imagination, the humor, the darkness, that is somehow all kind of mixed together to make such a unique voice. And and David Wilmot, I'm looking at his face right now, and Kerry Condon. I mean, my God, those were two exceptional, extraordinary performances. And I was lucky to be a part of it and just be kind of like a looming presence of, a bad guy with a gun who would kind of pop up every now and again. With Andrew Connolly and Dashiell Eaves. We played the kind of the Three Stooges. My head was decapitated in that show. So in the play, you can't say that many times in a show, but it's a very gory play, and at a certain point, the lights are revealed after a melee, a big gun extravaganza. The lights come up, and basically my body, my cadaver is there with someone kind of sawing my head off. Wasn't actually me, don't worry, it wasn't actually me. But I still have the head, I still have the life cast head of this experience. I've had them made before a couple times since then, but that one's special. A lot of blood in that show, which was peanut butter, by the way. We had to come in at one point having had our eyes shot out. I had to crash through a window with blood oozing from my eyes, but because they needed the blood to stay in the eye sockets, we had a mixture of red dye and peanut butter. Imagine three guys backstage, their backstage prep for that entrance, just kind of a little bucket, like a really stupid bucket with peanut butter and red goo, and you'd be like, okay, all right, I'm gonna get this on there as a stay, and you kind of lift. You had to keep your head up, because if you tilted it down, it would run. I mean, this is a life in the theater. Shrek the Musical. Oh my God. Well, again, the people is first and foremost, and the fun of this show is what comes to mind. Janine Tesori's incredible score. David Lindsay-Abair's just hilarity, directed by Jason Moore, who I went to school with. I went to college with Jason. And it was really fun to kind of have that professional experience after, a good chunk of time from our earlier days. Okay, so there's a lot to say about this show. And it's all wildly positive. The one thing that was hard was the makeup. And it was really difficult because it took an hour and a half to get in, and it took 45 minutes to get out. And on 2 show days, I couldn't get out of the big head. Janine Tesori would come in sometimes. She's like, "Oh, you're stuck in the head? You're stuck in the head? They won't let you out of the head?" I'm like, I can't get out. Sometimes I would order food, and because I couldn't take the head off in between shows, matinee and an evening performance, I'd order my food, and I'd have my little robe on, with my head on, my human body, and let's call it my non-Shrek body, and a Shrek head, and I go pick up my delivery from the stage door looking like Hugh Hefner on acid or something. I don't know, that's in the eyes of what I'm imagining the guy picking it up or delivering the food would think. And I would just really enjoy just straight face saying, like, "How much is that?" Just having a normal conversation. My daughter was in 2nd grade when I did Shrek, and she was not a fan. Not a fan. She, the first question she said was, "Do you have to kiss anyone?" And I said, "No, I don't think I have to kiss anyone. Shrek, he's an ogre." Of course, the whole thing he's like careening towards a kiss with Sutton Foster as Princess Fiona. So when she saw it, apparently she saw it with my mother during previews, and when that moment came, she saw this and she just went, betrayed by her ogre father. I mean, there's so many things to say about this show. I mean, oh God, Daniel Breaker as Donkey, Sutton Foster as Princess Fiona, Chris, oh my God, as Farquaad, oh my God. I mean, that performance as Farquaad was Christopher Seabird, sorry. I just call him Chris, and he calls me Peaches. I'm not sure why. That performance, my daughter now has gone full circle. She will now send me Spotify cuts from the album. They call them cuts these days, kids. She'll send me all of his stuff, and she'll say, "Listen to this." Like, I've never heard it before, but it is brilliant. I mean, that dude, Hey, Nani, 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 no. I'm thinking of Greg Reuter, who played the gnome, who's sadly no longer with us. Last thing I'll say about it. People in the theater are great. These companies are amazing. You forge a family very quickly. And it became clear in Seattle in our tryout that this makeup thing was going to be really, really brutal and hard and difficult. So a lot of the cast decided that what they could do is they could give me CD compilations of their favorite music that I could listen to while I was getting into makeup, which is fantastic. I still have like a collection of music that I would never have if it weren't for, my generous castmates. So that, things like that come to mind. And I will a shout out to Jack Scott, dresser extraordinaire. Jack was basically Shrek with me. Because that experience was so unusual and so demanding that, he would see me crushed by the exhaustion of it, and I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can continue doing this. It was really, really challenging on a physical level, and Jack Scott was just as bright as a penny, and just was always there to kind of start the day and be positive. And he's a Michigan guy, so that's not surprising. Anyway, I love that show so much, and I'm super proud of it. I'm really happy that you can watch it on Netflix. Next to Normal, an amazing experience. Again, Tom Kitt, Brian Yorkie, Michael Greif directed it. Tom Kitt wrote the music. Brian Yorkie wrote the book and lyrics. It's rare that you get to sing your sensibility of the music that you love most on a Broadway stage. Blood Brothers had that to some extent, in a pop element, but this is undeniably a rock pop score. I loved every single moment of it, of the music of it, but also what this show requires in terms of the what's asking of you emotionally and where it asks you to go. I can't go any further without saying, if I'm talking about what it required me to do, Alice Ripley had to take this incredible journey of an experience. She won the Tony for it, I believe. Yeah, she did. Rightly so. I mean, she gave everything to this part, and she was just beautiful, heartbreakingly beautiful. And I think my favorite moment was singing "You Don't Know" with her. That confrontation of the first act, where Dan is trying to be a good husband, trying to understand, trying to do the right thing, and she and he are just not making any inroads to understanding each other, and the anger and the frustration that's reflected in the music and her portrayal, her ferocity. There are moments where you kind of are on stage and you hope to have those experiences where everything is being pulled out of you and hopefully demonstrated in a way that is interesting and compelling and dramatic. But those experiences where you feel like you're being asked to do something and it's scary, and the material is going to take you there without a doubt. Those are the experiences I think that you yearn for and you hope for, and that was it. Of course, the last thing I'll say is Jen Damiano as my daughter, in that last moment of having to kind of, it makes me emotional just even thinking about it now. She would do this thing where Alice's character has left, and there's really nothing else we can do but hope that she can have a successful life. And Dan is depleted with everything that he's tried to do, and his confusion and his anguish, and he's just left there. And Jen Damiano just would every night break my heart with the simplest of gestures. It was a combination of what she did, it was a combination of what was written, but just her putting her hand on my shoulder and saying it's going to be okay, where the daughter now is taking care of the father. It was just extraordinary writing, extraordinary performance by Jen, and a kind of a bond that I think I'll always treasure because of that. It's funny how those moments in your life on stage can kind of be crystallized into moments that you carry forward that are super meaningful for the actor. I'll speak for myself, for me, and that's one of them. Time Stands Still. Oh my God, Dan Sullivan directed this show. I got to act with Laura Linney, opposite Laura Linney, on a Broadway stage. Can you believe that? Eric Bogosian, Alicia Silverstone originally played it, and then Christina Ricci did it on Broadway. I feel so lucky to have been given the responsibility to do this. I'm sure you see this a lot, where all of the things kind of cataloged through my head about all these experiences. This is a strange thing to remember, but I remember very early on, we were rehearsing the play, and the first scene is Laura's character coming in from after being injured in an explosion abroad. She's a photojournalist, and I'm a reporter, war journalist. And we're coming home, and I'm trying to take care of her. We're trying to figure out how to do this. And I'll never forget, it was the first day of blocking the scene, and she just went full on like injured person coming into a room with all of the pain and all of the, just carrying it in her body in a way that was just like, wait, how did you do that? What? And she's just acting, right? It's just acting. But it's just such a lesson in throwing oneself into it and committing to something. God, she is extraordinary. She is just, to me, the highest standard of what an actor and a human being should be. And I feel so lucky, again, like the John Lithgow experience, like working with these titans who you admire so much, and their body of work precedes you as just impeccable. And then all of a sudden you're kind of flung into the arena with them. You think, hope I can do it. And then you find that if you're lucky, you work with people who only want the best for you. So generosity and talent galore are things that really help me kind of get through that. Thinking of something that Dan Sullivan said to me in a direction that I'll never, ever forget. Took me a while to understand it. We were doing a scene where my character, Jamie, is getting very upset about something. And Dan is just an expert at kind of just boiling it down. I never worked with Mike Nichols, but I imagine he's similar to that in his ability to kind of get right to the issue. And he said, don't hide behind your Irish. Don't hide behind your Irish. What does that mean? He's like, just don't hide behind your Irish. And I think I understand what he was saying now is just, there's a kind of sardonic humor that comes out to mask pain and to mask upset. And I think I was reverting to that as opposed to just living in the actual thing. So that's something that I'll never forget. I mean, talk about an expert director just kind of jarring you out of your usual routine, just making you think about something to hopefully make you better. Dan Sullivan is the best. I love this play. Hamilton at the Public Theater. It's interesting that this is I love that it's the public playbill. Talk about being on the ground floor of something extraordinary. Oh boy. I'm so proud and so lucky to be a part of this story. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story. I loved this whole experience. And I always felt like I had kind of won the lottery in a way. I know everyone says that probably in the cast, probably feels the same way. But in a way, coming into it, I was a bit of a satellite, at the beginning, as is the character. So I had this sense of always kind of watching this show develop and evolve and just looking at it like, what the hell is this? I mean, I don't even get it. I mean, I was drawn to it like a huge magnet, of course, but I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind in terms of being on the periphery and watching it take shape. I suppose my colonoscopy story is probably warranted here. What? So I had just done the workshop of this, and I had my first colonoscopy, and apparently after I was coming out of my propofol haze, all the nurses were coming up to me and saying, "We can't wait to see the show. Thanks for telling us about the show." I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, you got us all tickets to this show. And apparently I was in this, I have no memory of this, but apparently I was saying, you gotta come see this show. And you gotta come see Alexander Hamilton. He raps. He raps. And it's about government. And it's probably the weirdest, I'm sure they hear a lot of weird things. But apparently I promised the whole nursing staff at St. Luke's that they could come see the show at the public theater. I mean, I guess that speaks to the kind of subconscious level of my appreciation for this show. I have a very distinct memory of the first night, the first public performance at the public theater. There was a fire, or the fire alarm went off. There wasn't a fire, but the fire alarm went off, and so the show was delayed. And I would get dressed in my king regalia and my white tights and my red satin pants and, you know, my whole king getup. And I would get dressed early so I could go and watch in the VOMs, the aisles leading under the stage where you could see on the stage of the public. And I had done that during the dress rehearsals, et cetera, so I kind of positioned myself in the VOM to watch Leslie Odom Jr. begin the show. And that extraordinary cast, oh my God. But this night, show didn't start because everyone had to file out because there was a fire alarm. So Thomas Kail and Thomas wandered into the VOM, and we sat there for 20 minutes just kind of reflecting on the fact that this thing was just about to happen and just talking about, you know, I don't remember what we talked about, but I'll never ever forget that moment because it was kind of like the before and after line of Hamilton for me and the world, really. But to have shared that moment with Tommy kind of felt like, you know, two astronauts like this, locked in their chairs, just waiting for the countdown, you know, because I think that's what astronauts do, right? Just waiting, and you're kind of locked in this position, and, you know, everyone knows what happened after that. But, okay, so that's all one part of this story. The second part is, what's interesting about this show for me was that I was going to do Something Rotten, which was a show that I'd also been working on in development. Something Rotten was especially funny and a totally different vibe, obviously, than Hamilton. Everything else is. We were supposed to go out of town, and that part of the equation was then eliminated. So all of a sudden, Something Rotten was going to happen on Broadway about a year and a half earlier than I had imagined. So in my mind, I was going to say, oh, I'll do this Hamilton thing, see how it goes. And then Something Rotten came about in a very realistic way. So I had to make this Sophie's choice of kind of, do I go down this road? Do I stay on this road? You know, people can make what they want of that decision, but I've always contended that I am the luckiest because I was able to do both. And it was a generous thing for Tommy and for Lynn and Andy and Alex Lackamoire and, you know, everyone at the public to kind of field that curveball because I presented this before I was going to leave, and they said, well, we'll have a chat and see if it's something we feel is tenable. Thank God they did. I mean, I'm so grateful that I was there at all. And of course, Jonathan Groff came in and just was perfection and just amazing, as he always is. The Hamilton experience was, I joke that I'm the Pete Best of the Beatles Hamilton story. I told this joke to a drummer, and he said, he didn't laugh. He said, no, that's not true because you didn't get fired. So I guess I take some solace in that. Something Rotten. This was, you know, I was talking about Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and how that was so fun to do because it was a comedy. This was appealing for the same thing. And I got to do my version of what the character had to offer in terms of the comedy. But the people around me in that show, comedy geniuses. I mean, let's start with Christian Borle as Shakespeare. Incredible. Brooks Ashmanskas. Anytime you're on stage with that man, I at least I'll speak for myself. I just look at him and I can't stop laughing. He's brilliant, and I loved every second of working with him. Brad Oscar. I mean, that guy is. He's just one of the best, and we had the great privilege of doing this great you know, It's a Musical number where I'll never forget it. During the first preview, I know this happens, but it never happened to me, where people stood up after the song and they wouldn't stop cheering. It was just so beautifully written by Carrie and Wayne Kirkpatrick and John O'Farrell, and Casey Nicholaw directed this thing, and it worked, and it was so thrilling because it was such a joy. It was a joyful romp of an experience, John Cariani and I would stand behind this little, we had to make this entrance. We played brothers, and every night we'd be behind this little makeshift wall that would open up while the first number would start. And again, you know, like sitting in the cockpit of an airplane or a rocket just about to take off, you know, John and I would have just, you know, be able to kind of just check in with each other, and just kind of off we went. And it was just one laugh after another, not because of what the show was doing, but because of how much we loved each other. That show is so special to me, and I think Carrie and Wayne and John just made a really, really, really funny show. I was lucky to be in that. The Ferryman, Jez Butterworth, another extraordinary writer. I mean, one of the best plays, maybe the best plays I've ever seen, let alone had the gift to be in. And I'm looking at this cast of people. Again, it's the people. What's really interesting about The Ferryman is that I kind of caught wind of it through my cousin who lived in London, a couple of people who saw it in London and said, hey, there's this play here that you should see, and this part that maybe you could play someday, you know, in Cleveland in a regional production or something. And so I saw it in London. My family and I, Jennifer and Grace and I, saw this show, and I was just blown away by it. I had seen Jerusalem by Jez Butterworth. This is a little tangent, but Mark Rylance's performance in that play really changed my whole perspective. Jerusalem is not in this, but in my experience of being in the show, but that show changed what I thought about acting, and I thought the ceiling was here, and Rylance's performance put the ceiling, like, ceiling didn't exist. I couldn't believe what I was watching. So then to be tasked with coming into a play that I revered, but what's really interesting about this, I'll get to my point someday, is that most of the cast that came in to replace the original cast were Americans. Not all, but most. And it's a large cast. And what I'm so proud of is the work that, you know, we all did to, I always liken it to that moment in Raiders of the Lost Ark when Harrison Ford has to take the bag of sand, remove the idol and put the sand in so that the big ball doesn't come forward. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Anyway, in this analogy, the big ball did not come forward because we were successful in kind of keeping the show alive, and I think beautifully. I'm just looking at Shuler Hensley. I'm looking at Fred Applegate and Terry Keeley, Holly Fain, Emily Burgle, Ethan Dubin. I mean, it was a great experience, feeling like we had carried the ball properly. But also, it was a very demanding play emotionally to do. And it was, again, going back to the next to normal analogy of feeling like when a drama has asked you to kind of go to a place that is going to be what the drama needs. It's what actors yearn for. And I felt like that experience for me was you know, so rewarding in that regard because of the performances and the kinship that I had with my cast who I love so dearly. My God. Into the Woods. This whole thing is such a gift, this production. I remember getting a call about this show that I'd heard was at Encores. Neil Patrick Harris couldn't do it, and would you consider coming in to play the baker? Well, of course, yeah, that seems like a no-brainer. I had no idea, no clue what this experience would be. I had done the role 20 years earlier, and famously kind of cursing, you know, Sondheim and like cows and mows and jows and I don't know, what does this even mean, this show? I don't understand it. And of course, 20 years later, I'm a father. I've lost my own father. And this show plugs into so many things. To have been asked to join this group of people who are making this change from the Encores production onto the Broadway stage, again, I felt like I won the lottery because I wasn't supposed to be there. And all of a sudden I was. Sarah Bareilles, of course, Gavin Creel, you know, we just celebrated a year, you know, of his passing a couple days ago or yesterday. And, you know, it's I'm so blessed that I got to be in his great presence and to work with him and to just experience the life force that Gavin was. And he was just an impeccable performer and even more of a vibrant, soulful, important person in the world and to so many people. So I have to mention that because that's the first thing that comes to me. I'm sure did Gavin ever do one of these? No? It would have been, he would have had, you would have had books and books and books. But I've always contended that one of the best parts, aside from finally understanding Sondheim, this experience to me, before I did it, I had the great realization that I was going to sing a harmony line with Sarah Bareilles. And that to me, every single night, it wasn't long. It's not a long time where the baker and the baker's wife sing a third relationship. And I don't know. I mean, I love her music so much, and I love her. She's the best. And to experience her ability as an actor and a musician, and just her joyous presence, I mean, she's so cool. I encourage everyone to get to know Sarah Bareilles if you get the chance. But that was every single person in that show was like that, and it was this kind of lightning in a bottle experience where everyone just was so well suited to their roles, and the spirit that Lear de Bessonet had directed this thing was just pitch perfect. And it was just one of those moments where I think people really wanted to celebrate Sondheim, who had passed, I think probably a year before or somewhere around there. So people were starting to really, just really appreciate, his genius. Not that they didn't before, but this was a moment to kind of celebrate it. And that confluence of appreciation and execution and the spirit and the deft way it was directed and presented all came together in this beautiful production. I mean, I have a Grammy Award because of this experience. I mean, never in my life would I have expected that to be in the cards. So the whole thing is just, Into the Woods, it was just one big, huge gift that I got to open up, and so lucky to be in that production. There's Kelly. I was hoping I'd see her again in this book of nonsense, of my theatrical tales, Days of Wine and Roses. It's not nonsense, by the way, I'm joking. This, to me, represents, it's fitting that it's near the end, because obviously it's one of the last things I've done, but it is, I think, a culmination of things for me that I want to be in the theater, which is challenged. I want to be challenged. I want to be asked to do things that I don't know if I can do. And I'm lucky that Adam Guettel and Michael Greif and Craig Lucas said, yeah, we think you can do this. Because I've never experienced something where I had more reverence for the thing itself and wanting to get the character right, the storytelling right, the idea of the story, what the story means, not only to the characters, but to the world at large. The idea of addiction, depicting someone in the throes of addiction. In this case, alcoholism, understanding that and wanting to represent that all was a very serious endeavor. And then to do it in a way that required singing and acting, I guess that's why I say it represents a bit of a culmination of what I always dreamed that I could be asked to do. And then to do it with Kelly O'Hara as a hand in hand with somebody jumping out of an airplane is really just a treasured experience for me because of the trust and what we had to do every single night to kind of make this show, to pull it off in a way that hopefully was, compelling and empathetic and damning and all the things that it required it to be. It was a tall order. And I was talking earlier about composers and how sometimes you instinctively understand the DNA of a composer, how they write and how they think. Adam has this way of operating. Adam Guettel has a way of writing music that is seemingly, for me, I can't grasp it at first, but once I take time to try to figure out with him, at my side, and through tutelage and through exploration and studying and doing of it, you realize that his music is operating at a whole different level. And so I feel like I was made better by virtue of that pursuit. I can't say that I always succeeded, but I'm really proud of what I did. I'm not saying I failed, but I always felt like there was, I always aspired to getting to the place where Adam writes like designers create cathedrals in my mind. And I always wanted to kind of be able to kind of sing it properly. But Adam Ghetto would be the first person to say, it doesn't necessarily matter how it sounds if the person isn't alive, if the character isn't alive, if the character isn't real. So this show was such a great combination of musical execution and also an execution of a real lived experience. In the case of Joe Clay, my character. Again, just to wrap it up, back to Kelly, she's the reason it happened. She basically, actually going back to Sweet Smell of Success, after we worked together, she wanted to work together again with me, and she started working with Adam Gettle on Light in the Piazza, and she said, hey, I've got this crazy idea of turning Days of Wine and Roses, the movie, into a musical. This was 20 years ago, maybe? And we've done iterations along the way. The fact that any show happens is miraculous, but this one in particular is a miracle, because I kind of feel like if I had to close this book and say, hey, that's my life in the theater, I'd be so satisfied with that being the last thing I talked about, because I feel like that is a flag in the mountaintop saying, yeah, I was here. But kids, there's more. So here we are at at Anna Christie, a show I haven't done yet. I have no memories of this play. I only have expectation and the natural fear and anxiety that comes with trying to figure out what is gonna happen and how do you do it. This is kind of what you see here. This really cool beard that I'm rocking is in part trying to kind of get a sense of who Chris Christopherson, the character that I play in Anna Christie, is, who's a Swedish barge captain. I think this says Swedish barge captain, don't you? Here's the thing, it's a Eugene O'Neill play. I'm gonna be doing a Eugene O'Neill play in New York City, starring Michelle Williams, and directed by Tommy Kail, a person who I adore and revere and have had the chance to work with before. There's a lot to explore with this play, and I'm just starting to kind of sift through it, and I've been living with it for a bit in terms of the preparation that I'm doing. I just got back from Sweden, actually. I took a little trip to Sweden, to Stockholm, to kind of get a sense of the language. O'Neill writes this particular character with phonetically a dialect that, that hopefully will be executed in a way that doesn't offend any Swedish person. It's an interesting thing to try to tackle. I've done an Irish accent before that's a little closer to who I am kind of in my DNA. This is going to be a different thing altogether. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be an extraordinary experience. I'm really looking forward to it. And it's going to be at St. Anne's Warehouse from November 25th to February 1st. Get your tickets now. If there's something that maybe a theme that has occurred through the roles that I have gotten to play, I sense that there might be either the people that are looking to fill these roles or things that I'm gravitating to are characters in crisis. Every character's in crisis in a play, otherwise there's no drama. But let's put it this way, normal people push to extreme places, whereas maybe if you're like a kind of a ruffian or like someone who's kind of already in that world or on that avenue, I'm not. I'm kind of a normal Joe who is pushed into a place, and I think that might be a common theme. It's not for me to say. I don't know if that's true or not. Could I have expected I would be where I am when I started this life in the theater? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that when I did Blood Brothers, I distinctly remember having the feeling of waiting to go on for the first time. I was replacement in that show, so I had to rehearse it, and then I had to kind of jump into it as it was already running. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what is this going to be like? I'm gonna be in a Broadway show. And the second I walked on stage, I realized, oh, I know how to do this. This is the same thing that I've done in my high school production of Bye Bye Birdie. This is the same thing I've done in a Neil Simon play I did in college. This is the same thing I've done on a summer stock stage. It's all the same requirement, just a different building. Obviously, it's a different thing because it's a Broadway show. But what you need to do is you need to put your costume on, you have to remember your lines, you have to go to the place where the director told you to stand to say your lines. It's all the same. I remember being very comforted by that and feeling, okay, yeah, I can do this. It's what I've been doing since 8th grade, basically. So in that sense, yeah, I do feel like I can't imagine this being the place or the journey that I've had. On the other hand, there's no way of describing or of being able to forecast the appreciation you'd have for the people that have come into your life that have shaped you, changed you, and have made you just a more alive person. I've had the benefit of working with so many great artists, and I feel like that's the thing you could never understand or kind of begin to see in the future. You know, like how will this life change you? Well, it's the people. It's the people. It's the artistry that you experience with the people that you're working with that is ultimately gonna change you. And I think every person who comes into this room to talk about the things will probably say the same thing, is the people that they work with and they learn from and they experience things with on stage and outside stage is the thing that makes you, is the unexpected beauty of it all. I love that.